Okay, let's get started. Welcome to Getting to Know AI, the webinar. AI has been floating around the industry for a good 3 to 4 years now. It's no longer just a buzzword, it's real. The results with AI are real. It's a value-based proposition. And AI is part of every utility and council's digital journey. I'm Patrick Bonk, a software solutions lead here in Asia Pacific with Innovyze. I've got James, Director of AI Products, located in Kitchener, Canada, Ontario. Welcome, James. How are you doing today?
Hey, Patrick, I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too.
Yeah, quite well. A couple Canadians on the other side of the world talking AI.
That's true. That's true. Well, I think Canada's got deep roots in AI. Actually, there's a lot of folks. If you look into some of the three godfathers of AI, three of them, a couple of them reside in Canada. So deep roots here.
Fascinating, fascinating. So for today's presentation, the slide deck portion is going to be about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even 25 minutes. But a real important part of today is the Q&A. So please fire your questions into the webinar questions dialog box, and this will be your chance to interact with James' expertise and perspective on the subject of AI relative to water. So even as we're presenting, please ask your questions here. So today we're going to cover, how artificial intelligence is helping water utilities to reduce OPEX costs and maintain compliance. Those are two important things. How AI works within a water or wastewater utility, specifically, how AI is implemented in terms of getting started, and all importantly, how to determine if your particular site and what you're working on qualifies for AI as an application. And whether you're on an ops team, an ops supervisor, or a manager, an engineer, an executive and decision maker within a particular organization, the content today is relevant to all of you in some way. So we're excited for today's topic. James, did you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about AI. Like Patrick said, he made a lot of great points that it's here. It's been here for a little bit. It's been talked about a lot. It's still very new in some places, but you know what? It's actually here, and we have a strong value proposition behind it now, where we can make sense of it and how it actually works in the water and wastewater industry. So to kind of frame how we're coming at this, we're firmly focusing this AI in the operations sector. We kind of looked at operators and said, okay, facility operators are making dozens of complex operational decisions based on human judgment and experience on a minute-to-minute, sometimes hourly, daily basis. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge that's built up over the years about how they operate, and they know their facilities inside and out, and that's how they're able to operate and manage them. But as things change, it becomes more challenging. And as the energy prices rise, the climate continues to change in ways that we maybe haven't seen in the past, or stresses the way we've operated in the past. There's new solutions we need to tackle. And that's what we see. So some of our water systems are vulnerable to the impacts of extreme weather events. So it seems like we've had these types of weather events before, but maybe it hasn't been for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So we may have forgotten how we operated during them. And separately, there's always constantly changing conditions. Operations is not a long-term horizon planning thing. It is very much, how do I operate in the current conditions I have and continue to do that day over day, year over year. And thirdly, sometimes some of our utilities have aging infrastructure, and it's not always feasible to continually updating to the latest and greatest. It's a matter of how do I continue using what I have and optimizing with what I have until I am ready to actually replace that infrastructure based on my budget and timing plans. And that's where Imagine comes in. So Imagine delivers AI that empowers water and wastewater operations with the ability to intelligently manage their processes in real time. And there's a key thing here in real time. Because of those constantly changing conditions, we're always operating in real time. We're always adapting to what's happening in your SCADA systems, but also the environment around you, and whether that be weather data or your energy tariff changing, or even a high important event in your city. For example, a football match that may cause water usage to spike and discharge to spike as well. All that data is flowing into the system and into the models, and we're optimizing based on all of that. So we can really gather a lot of different data sources very dynamically than maybe we had in the past. And this is where I was getting to earlier. So we're now at the stage where we can say this is an outcome-driven platform. It's not just AI to optimize something. We're actually coming at it very, very, very directly and saying we can guarantee a 6-month payback And to do that, we're probably going to save you about 20 to 30% of your OPEX, comprised of energy savings on the big energy consuming assets in your system, chemical savings, depending based on the chemicals you have in your processes. There's a huge opportunity to save there. Potentially downtime reduction when it comes to your reverse osmosis membranes that are commonly found in water treatment plants. And also potentially improving or maintaining your process compliance. That is a huge deal for folks, and so we have to continually focus on maintaining that. But we package that all up, and we're able to achieve those outcomes and guarantee a 6-month payback year over year as we progress and continue optimizing your system. So that sounds great. You're probably going to say, and Patrick, if there's any questions that have come in, give me. I can answer them now if they want to kind of chime in on that.
I think we're good to continue, but yes, please type your questions in as James is going through the slides. If you want to cover the case study, that would be good.
Yeah. So I'll go through a case study that will explain a bit more about how we're actually going to do this and about some of the challenges our customers have. So maybe it makes it a bit more relatable to how your facility may use this as well. So we'll start with a use case here. We have a plant operations in the Midwest US. We're going to look at Joe, who's a wastewater plant operator. So Joe's got a system here that may look very similar to kind of wastewater facilities you may have seen or you may run in the past. You have influent coming in. You have some sort of biological treatment plus process happening. Commonly, there's air being blown into that system to dissolve oxygen. You have a secondary clarifier where that goes, and that also returns both solids coming out and also returns activated sludge back to the system. And then ultimately, you have effluent coming out, in this case, to a river with some kind of high ammonia content. And so this is a common setup, but Joe's challenge is he manages this large plant and they discharge a lot to the local river. And so how does he optimize that a bit more? And some of the challenges he's seeing is that due to climate change and regulations that are changing for plant discharges are becoming stricter. And so his job's actually becoming harder over time, even though he's still producing or processing the same volume, but the restrictions are becoming stricter. And so he needs to figure out how to manage that. And then out of fear of being fined by the regulator, he's now overusing energy and chemicals to make sure his plant is compliant. This is a common situation we see where, especially on the chemical side, you may have found a happy level of chemical dosage that never causes a non-compliant event coming out in the effluent. And that's great. But now that you're getting more strict, you need to add more chemicals to guarantee that. And you may not have the right data and tooling to understand what is the right dosage to achieve the effluent compliance as it gets stricter over time. And his manager may not be happy, but you're continuing to add more chemicals to kind of be safe on that margin because that's continuing to add to the rising cost of operations. So the use case here we have with Joe is how do we help? How does the Imagine AI help him? And so what we come in is the AI predicts the high strength sewage load entering the wastewater plant. So it sees and predicts what's coming in based off of the environment around it. It then recommends a cost optimized control schedule to handle the incoming sewage load. And so that commonly would be controlling the aeration blowers in this facility to dissolve oxygen at the appropriate rate to ensure the right ammonia levels coming out. We also may control the chemical dosage set point in that system. So maybe they're doing chlorine dosing and we're tracking the residuals throughout the system and using that residual as a way to as a surrogate to indicate what the effluent quality will be coming out based on how we train the models. So we've gone and done this with Joe. Joe implements these control recommendations. So he takes the recommendations from the product, as you see in the screenshot in the middle of the screen here. He implements those on his blowers and on his chemical dosing set points, and he's able to save approximately 30% on energy OPEX. So pretty big savings for Joe here. And so the way we talk about AI, and that may sound complicated, but we want to kind of step back and say it's not as complicated as it may seem. The AI itself is always self-adjusting. So we're always adapting to the changing conditions. We're adapting to the load coming in, to the weather forecast coming in, and always able to understand what's happening in the environment around it and the system as well. This is especially important in our current global pandemic, but we're able to remotely install and remotely access the system, and so is the customer. So we can do a remote install completely of the system, and then you can, of course, as a customer, remotely access this from anywhere you have the internet and a login. Working from home, innovation is happening out of necessity, but it's something we've had baked in from the product from day one. So it's been pretty exciting to see the leveraging that companies have been able to do on that. And then thirdly, it's to conserve costs on your existing budget. costs are rising, but budgets aren't a lot of the time. So how do you manage that? And one way is to actually conserve costs on that. And that's a big area we can help on with reduction of energy and chemical costs while maintaining compliance, of course, without having to request new budget is a big thing that Imagine can help with. And so before I get into how we actually implement, to explain that a bit more, I'll pause and see if Patrick, there's any questions that have come in while I've been going through the slides.
Yeah, there's been a few really good ones. James, did you want to sit on the adoption slide while we kind of address the couple that have come in? So just generally, what type of water and wastewater systems can this Imagine platform apply to? So from what I understand, like the AI can be, it can abstract any process schematic, and then it takes a real-time predictive model. What types of systems are we looking at from a public side of things, and then a private sector like commercial site?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to the standard water utility, which may be public in some regions of the world and maybe privatized in others, but let's focus on water utilities. Imagine is well situated to work in both the water treatment plant and in the wastewater plant. There is a bit of optimization we can do in your distribution networks, but the best applications and success we've seen have been in water treatment plants and wastewater plants. And then now when I step back and look outside into the private industrial commercial sectors, we've really started working very closely with the pulp and paper industry and the beverage industry. And the main reason there is that certainly in the beverage industry, their product is highly liquid, like water utilities. And they also have the same challenges in treating that water, the source water treatment coming in, and also the effluent discharge. So they may have their own water treatment and wastewater facilities, so we naturally fit there. And pulp and paper is similar, but a bit different. They don't necessarily, their product is not liquid, it's paper or cardboard, but they certainly source a lot of water in the pulping process. So they have, help them optimize there. And a lot of the time we also help heavily optimize on the effluent wastewater discharge process. Since they use a lot of water, they have a lot of discharge and waste as well. So those are some of the big markets we're looking at. And then we're also now looking into the mining industry where, again, they use a lot of water in that process and they have a lot of discharge in the wastewater process. So those are some of the other industries outside of just the water utilities where we can apply the AI.
Okay, excellent. And then this one relates to the COVID lockdown. This is a question from a listener. We noted some interesting shifts on typical diurnal patterns and water wastewater volumes during the shift during this particular lockdown. Can you just speak to how AI can handle that? It looks like the self-adjusting aspect on this slide relates to that question.
Yeah. So I think the AI is not always just looking for the pattern. It is looking for we train the models to be able to adapt to the inputs to the system. And so, yes, the diurnal patterns generally have shifted, and maybe sometimes they haven't even shifted. They may have changed in height or gone up or down as well. But the AI is able to adapt since it is a trained model. It is able to recognize, okay, the demand's going up or going down, and able to self-adjust to that situation. So we have seen that be able to handle fairly well in the current situation. But that's a great question because we have seen demand shift different times of day and different coming from different areas than you normally expect.
So another question relates to that. What environment factors are used to create the prediction? So that would relate to the model inputs.
Yeah. So the most common one we use is rainfall forecast. That is the biggest driver we have. Certainly when it comes to wastewater, it's that you can use that as a way to forecast what's coming into the system. That's a big one we use. That's the environmental main ones we use. Temperature as well is included in there as it relates to seasonality. The way in which you operate your facility in the winter may be different than the summer. And the way to recognize that a lot of the time is one of the inputs is temperature. Those are the two big ones I would say, but there's other ones depending on the situation with the customer when it comes to environment.
Okay. And then in terms of inputs as well, this is another question from a listener. Does the AI model predict contamination in the water treatment plant? Like, do we have a use case of predicting contamination as of yet?
We haven't had that use case. I think a lot of the time we're focused on trying to optimize energy consumption and chemical usage and maintaining compliance. So if the compliance is to keep contamination below a specific level, then that was something we would target. We're usually trying to optimize on the system level as well, rather than look for a specific contamination event. But certainly there is the ability for the AI to detect events happening in the system. So that is possible, but usually it's not the primary objective of our deployments.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm just reading through the questions here. The next few relate to implementation, so that's kind of the next section of the slide deck. If you want to continue on to that, we'll cover implementation and the way it's kind of structured and set up.
Yeah, let's go through that. So this is the big question that comes up is, okay, this all sounds great, James, but how do I actually implement this, and can my site actually support this? And so the way we set up our deployment process is that first we have an installation process, and that involves a variety of things. But primarily, first we start with defining what are the success criteria of this project. Is it energy optimization? Is it chemical? Is it compliance? Maybe it's all three. Make sure we're very clear on what those are and what we're trying to achieve. At that point, we also request a lot more data from the customer. So we ask for 2 years of your historical data. We can work with a lot less, but 2 years is our preferred. That historical data is used to train the AI models on how to respond to the system, capture seasonality and events that maybe don't happen frequently throughout the year. So 2 years usually is a good amount of data to do that. We also then start working with the customer on real-time data integration. So if you remember, Imagine operates in real time. It's not just doing a point-in-time optimization. So in addition to that 2 years historical data, we need to get a data export of your SCADA database every 15 minutes commonly. And I'll talk more about how that process works, but that is a key ability for us to operate in production, is having that real-time data coming in so we can be adapting to those changing conditions in your system. Once we get through the installation process, then we'll do a proof of concept for 30 days. And that's just to prove that those success criteria we defined in the installation process can actually be achieved in those 30 days and be representative of the rest of the year. And then after that, we go fully live with a price guarantee based on performance. And we use that POC to make sure that price guarantee is locked in. So there's more details to be talked about there. If you are interested to talk more about pricing, POCs, and how all that works, I highly encourage you to reach out to one of our Innovize sales experts, and we'd be more than happy to go through those details and talk about an example site and how it would work at your facility. But let me go talk a bit more about how some of this works. So you say, okay, James, tell me more about how the data integration works, because my SCADA system is very secure. I don't want anyone touching it. And in fact, my SCADA computer is not even connected to the internet. So how are you going to get data out? And so we thought about that as well. So commonly what we do is we'll start in the far left of this diagram. You'll have a SCADA historian, likely on the same computer as your SCADA system, or maybe a separate one, maybe not connected to the internet. What we'll commonly work with our clients on is they will set up a scheduled task every 15 minutes that grabs data from that data historian, transfers it to another internal computer inside your network. Once it gets there, then that data then gets pushed out to the internet to a secure Amazon location. So for each customer, we will create a shared secure Amazon location where we can store all the as an intermediary to store all the data you push out. That will be securely accessed by you and by Imagine. It's inside the Imagine private cloud at our AWS instance. Once the data gets into that shared area, the Imagine system will recognize that you push new data. It will ingest that data, transform it into the appropriate format for the AI. The AI will then boot up and run on the latest data and re-optimize if there's been a significant change in the system that requires an adjustment, and then deliver updated recommendations to the dashboard. So working on this data integration process, we generally will work with your IT department on this to go through the nitty-gritty and the finer details, but we'd be happy to talk more for those interested. Now that's great. So now we have data integration, but how, as an operator, do I actually get your recommendations? And so we kind of went through step one here on the integrate. It may not just be SCADA data. Sometimes we'll get your CMMS data or your LIMS data, depending on how your data is structured and what is of importance in the success criteria. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we use weather data and or social media or events data if there's something significant that happens in your locale. Then we'll recommend, the AI will boot up, build those recommendations, and we'll push them out to a web dashboard. So the way we deliver the recommendations is in advisory mode. I think this is an important point to make, is the AI is not taking over. It's not actually controlling your SCADA system. It's only advising you via the web dashboard on what is the best course of action to take in controlling your system. And then your operators still take those recommendations and they put them back in to control your system through your SCADA or other system. So there still is human interaction, 100%, you still have final say on whether you choose to use those recommendations or not. So there is that fail-safe there. And then another question a lot of folks ask is, does your site qualify? And so we've got this question a lot. And so we've actually built a payback calculator on our website. We'll share the link after, where you can go through and enter some details about an example site. And it will give you an estimate of the actual savings. And then we can follow up from there and talk more. But I'll play through this video and we'll show a bit of a quick video on how you would go about calculating this to get an idea of how it works. So we'll go through it. Here's our website here where you can learn a bit more. Try our payback calculator out. And Patrick, while it plays a little bit, is there any questions that are of importance, or should I keep just walking through the video?
There's one around facility instrumentation. The data I have, how do I know if it relates to the platform itself? So to me, it sounds like kind of that's the assessment that we can do with our internal team once we begin this process.
Exactly. And honestly, I think this is an interesting, good question, because in this payback calculator, excuse me, we ask you a lot of those questions to determine your instrumentation level at a high level. And then as we go further in the discussions, we'll go to a more detailed level. So here, as you can see, we chose the locale of the site. We're going to provide a name of the site. And then if you give me a few seconds, we'll get to the other screens here. You'll choose the type of your site, whether it's water treatment, wastewater, or water distribution. We'll ask different questions based on the type of site you choose. And here's where we get into determining some of the instrumentation. So do you have remote control of your assets? Having a remote control is a big deal for us. If you don't have remote control, it's more challenging to implement the recommendations that are always changing. So the ability to have remote control is a big deal, and it makes it easier to optimize. Additionally, do you have inlet and outlet quality analyzers? So the best case, we have inlet and outlet quality analyzers is a good one. Here they didn't, so it's going to reduce the ability to optimize. But this is how we start gauging the ability of your system to be optimized. Then we'll ask some standard questions of what's the daily flow rate of your facility. And that's used as part of the calculations on the volumes and pricing. Again, monthly energy. So key thing is to identify how much energy you're using. And the focus there is not on your entire energy bill, it's really on the energy bill for those items in your network, like the pumps, the blowers, the compressors that are actually driving that process. We'll ask also about the energy tariff structure. This is a big one. So using that structure gives us the ability to optimize further if you have a time of use or peaks. Knowing about that is key for the AI, so it doesn't burn too much energy when it's not intending to. And then power metering. Power metering is a big one. So the best case is you have dedicated power sub-metering. Honestly, most customers may not. Obviously, customers will have some kind of power metering commonly. They do get some kind of bill. But this is a great way in which we can track at a very detailed level what is the energy being consumed and track the savings. And then we'll also ask, what's the monthly chemical usage? So then once we're through the energy, it's a matter of, okay, what kind of chemicals do you use? And what level of can we optimize them based on the facility you took? So in this instance, it was a bit lower than some sites because I think we didn't have as good instrumentation, but there still was about a 9 to 18% ability to save you on OPEX. And I think after you submit this, one of our innovative sales experts will follow up with you and we'll talk a bit more about how we start saving you money there. And this is our website.
So that you literally just find that, go to innovise.com, it's on the top end, and then you click through that that savings calculator. How long do you think it takes to fill that out? Half hour?
I think I would say 3 to 5 minutes. I think if it depends how well you know the answers to some of those questions that maybe people got a sneak peek on. I would say 3 to 5 minutes, but maybe a half hour if you want to call up your friends to get a lifeline to get a couple answers. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess it's a multitasking world. You're right. So it's probably more like half an hour, but it's pretty quick.
Okay, I've got a question here relating to that POC process. How can this analysis be justified to upper management for water systems in order to overcome the black box, in quotation, aspect of AI? So it's a bit 2 parts.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of ways there, yeah. So because we do the POC, we can prove the savings to you. I think the way we price it is with that 6-month payback guarantee as well, proves those savings to you. And in the POC, you'll actually see it happen. I also think you're starting to see AI talked a lot more in the industry. So there's ways in which you can share that information with your managers. And I'd highly encourage you to talk to one of our Optimize experts, because we can help frame up the pitch for your manager about how we talk about this and work with you on that. So we'd invite you to do that, and we've got some templates we can give to you to support those efforts.
Okay, and then savings in the second year, how are they related to the savings achieved in the first year? Is it a rolling thing? It's a real-time system, so how is that calculated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So year one will save you an amount, and then year two, we will relook at any changes you've made to your system and revise any savings amounts. But we will aim to save you the savings again. The way we look at this is the anti-model approach. If you use the Imagine AI in year one, you'll save, let's say, 15%. And if you use it in year two, let's say it's 15% still. But if you do nothing in year two, you're not going to save anything. So it's more the anti-model approach. We're not continually optimizing by an additional rolling 30 plus 30 plus 30. We can't get to zero. That'd be nice if we could, but use the anti-model approach. So you're going to have savings year over year, and have that 6-month payback year over year as well on those savings.
Perfect. Here's another one on POC. It's really relevant. During the POC period, how do you demonstrate the expected savings over such a short time frame, given many other variables will be driving overall energy use?
Yeah, so that's where part of that power metering comes in. So we'll hone in. We also use the historical data to calculate this as a baseline. So we take that 2 years historical data and say, okay, what was the average energy you consumed on your pumps in that 2 years historical data? And then we use that as a baseline to compare against over this 1 month. We'd also look at that historical data and say, okay, what was the average energy consumption in, let's say the POC was in June. What was the average in June back then versus what is the average in June now? And then use that as a way to extrapolate the rest of the year. So the historical data really comes in key in that process to use as a baseline to determine that.
Okay, excellent. Another one related. There's a couple coming in on the cost questions. Does the payback include missing infrastructure needed to make the system work?
That's a great question. So in our sales evaluation process, we will be, to qualify you, there's a milestone we call it if your system is AI ready, and part of that is having the right instrumentation in place, having a SCADA system, having a SCADA historian, having the ability to push live data to us. And so if there is missing instrumentation, we will identify that in the qualification process. A lot of the time we can work around that depending on what part of the network is missing. There may be a surrogate, a data source available that we can use, and we can work around it. If it does require that you do need some new sensors in your system, then that would be a separate thing we have to work with you on to get implemented. This is purely a software only solution generally, but we do partner with sensor providers if there is a need for having additional hardware in your system, and we can install a SCADA historian as well if that's needed.
Okay, and then is there a standard associated cost to implement this system? It sounds highly variable, and that's why there is a POC process. But how would you speak to that kind of upfront cost? Maybe back to the ROI and that return period associated with the implementation?
Yeah, there is an installation fee for sure. I mean, we look at the installation fee similar to if you buy internet for your house. You're going to pay a monthly internet fee, but you're also going to pay an install fee, a line connection fee, a modem fee to buy the modem. That's similar to what we do now. So we have an install fee in year one, but you don't pay that in year two and year three. So that is, the install fee is separate from the payback, simply because it only happens in year one. But there's a heavy lift there. I think that pricing differs depending on the complexity of your system. So I'd highly encourage you to talk to our Innovize experts, and they can start talking to you more intelligently about what that install fee looks like based on the complexity and size of your system and where you are.
Okay, great. Do you want to just talk a little bit about, there's been a couple questions coming in around, it was actually referred to Joe, the persona you had on the slide. Will this AI take Joe's job?
Yeah, that's a great question we get a lot of the time. So one, Joe is still involved in reviewing those recommendations and making sure that they're valid before he implements them. And two, I think now Joe is a lot of his time has been freed up to do higher level tasks. And instead of now doing the day-to-day operations for 80% of his day, maybe it's now only 50%. and he has more time to do higher level tasks, to plan the next stage of innovation, to optimize the chemical process or change the chemical process. There are other tasks he's freed up to do. So the intent is not to take his job. We're not taking full control of the system either. So there is still work for Joe to do, absolutely, but it will change the way in which he does his operations.
Okay. Do you want to speak with how one would interact with the software? So if you look at the dashboard, you review site goals, performance reports, there's recommendations versus operations. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yep. Yeah, so because of we have this strong payback period, we also have what we call site goals, which are effectively KPIs in the system. So they may be tracking energy usage, chemical usage. They'll track how well the recommendations are performing. You can track a variety of things in there as well. But those are the key early indicators you have to see how you're performing day over day, week over week, month over month. Those are always in the system and there for you to look at, including the forecast of them. The second real common thing is the recommendations themselves. So you actually will get the recommendations. In the case of a wastewater facility, Joe would be taking recommendations on when to turn the blowers on and off, and what concentration to apply chemical dosing, for example. He'd then get automated reports out of the system as well to indicate how well he was following the recommendations, and then what was his expected savings versus actual savings as well coming out of the facility. So someone like Joe, who's the operator, he may choose to receive those every 24 hours or maybe even every 8-hour shift. And then whereas his manager or some of the higher level execs may only receive them weekly or monthly. That's all configurable in the system. So we have the automated reporting to really tell you how well you're performing, how well you're following the recommendations, and how your savings are being monitored. And on our side, we're always monitoring those as well. So we're always working to make sure you're successful, because then we'll be successful.
Okay. James, I think our listeners are concerned about Joe. How do you get buy-in from Joe through this process up front?
Yeah, so I think that's a big deal, is one, to sit with them. So there's the reason we're not just AI experts here, we actually are process engineer experts as well. So we have a full team of process engineers who sit behind this. And when you do progress to that installation phase, we get our process engineer front and center with Joe, and they start talking shop, if you will. So we have a wastewater expert, we have a water treatment expert. They will be there with Joe. They'll actually need to talk to Joe and understand how the process works, understand that, and they'll be able to really connect with Joe at that level. So a lot of the time, that's where we see that strong connection coming, because you're right, Joe may be skeptical when this comes in from his manager that, hey, we can save costs. So that's a lot of the time where we do it. And then certainly in the POC, Joe will start to see some of those results and see some of the changes that will cause the savings, and he'll be able to understand them at that point.
Okay, great. Let's shift it a little bit to comparing it maybe to existing systems and then maybe data security. So in terms of SCADA, the question is, how different is this from a SCADA system? And can you share the improvement add-ups to the SCADA system to move up to the AI level? That's verbatim how it was asked.
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer a couple of phases. So a SCADA system is more usually about controlling the system, like the actual physical control of the assets. And then your historian usually sits in companion with that SCADA system that stores the history. The Imagine AI sits as a third peer there. It is developing the most optimized way to control that system and looking at that and forecasting that out in 24 hours. And then that goes back into the SCADA system. So they work together hand in hand. They don't necessarily, they're not really overlapping in that sense. And then, sorry, Patrick, remind me the second part of that question. I didn't know if I fully grasped that.
Yeah. Yep. Can you share the improvements, add-ups to the SCADA system to move up to the AI level?
Yeah. Okay. I'll take a guess at what I think the submitter's asking. I think month over month, year over year, those additional savings come out of the Imagine AI platform and go into the SCADA system. We have seen instances as well where customers have said, "This is great. I'm saving 20%, but if I added additional control into more parts of my network, can I save more?" We've had situations there where we're able to use the AI to say, okay, if you added additional hardware into your system or additional assets, we could actually save you more, and we can help quantify that. And so that builds a business case for then you to take back, say, okay, hey, we need to add that fourth blower this year, and here's real data to back up how much money we can actually save in doing that. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's certainly one way we've seen adding improvements to your system through the AI.
Okay, great. There's a question here about data security and global standards. So how does Imagine comply with national critical infrastructure and cybersecurity?
Yeah, so great question. So I think when we talk to SCADA systems, your SCADA system is already highly secured inside your network. And so that's partly why Imagine generally isn't coming into your network. We're letting you push the data out of your system to us. So that sense, we're not getting involved in touching your SCADA system. Our data is always stored in a specific region. So if you have GDPR, for example, we have a region in Europe, so your data never leaves the Europe region when it's at rest. If you have other data requirements, we have a region in North America, we have a region in Canada. We can spin up regions as needed based on your data requirements. So we generally haven't found that to be an issue because AWS is fairly global. It's easy to spin up the right region so your data resides in the place you desire it to. And then separately, security, we leverage all of Amazon's gold standard security. So we have a virtual private cloud. It's like a private network in the cloud. The data doesn't leave that. And once it's in there, it doesn't go out except through the web dashboard where you access it. That is controlled with SSL certification. You need to log in to get in and see it, and you can only see your site. And then also when data is coming to us, that's also secured either through secure FTP or other security means, depending on the preference from the client. But it is secured round trip and all transactions.
Okay, great. This next one relates to kind of the minimum amount of data required and the type of data that you would need. So the amount of data and the type of data to get started.
Yeah, so in a perfect world, I'm guessing the question may be asked because they may not feel they have the right amount of data. In a perfect world, we have 2 years historical data. Like let's say your site is a wastewater facility. Perfect world, you have 2 years historical data in your SCADA historian of how you've operated that facility that we can use. And the type of data will depend on what we're trying to optimize. So if it's wastewater and we want to optimize energy, we would need data around how you're around the blower run statuses, probably around dissolved oxygen, for example. We'd probably need ammonia, COD, VOD levels throughout the system and what's coming out. And then any kind of flow rates happening along with influent coming into the system. Again, I think this is a great question, and I would love to have you talk more with our Innomise experts, because I think we can go into the more details around exactly what type of data we need once we learn a bit more about the site you may have in mind. But that's an example of the type of data we would need for a wastewater facility.
And that's a natural segue. A lot of the questions coming in have gotten really specific about a particular site or a data scenario, or does this apply to sewer networks? Does this apply to water networks? They're highly variable questions, and that's part of this assessment process that you'll undergo with the assessment and implementation team. There actually have been a few questions that have come in with regards to hydraulic models. I was wondering if you wanted to do just a quick rapid fire, like give me your first thought that comes to mind when you hear this. So it'll be a combo of AI to hydraulic models. Okay, so just be quick thoughts.
Yeah, I love that question. You're not the first person to ask. That is something on our roadmap. So we're looking at ways in which we can leverage the hydraulic model. So a lot of facilities have invested a lot of time and effort in their hydraulic models and keeping them well calibrated, and in some instances even live. And we're looking at ways we can leverage that data. So the question 2 questions ago was, how much data do I need? And the answer was 2 years historical. But what if I don't have that? Well, one of the use cases we're looking at with your hydraulic model is the ability to generate synthetic historical data from that hydraulic model, given the simulation parameters. So that's one way we're going to start integrating with the Imagine AI in our hydraulic models. And then others as well is, as we start going to more dynamic systems, is maybe using the hydraulic model to simulate the effects of the water coming out of your water treatment plant where Imagine AI is optimizing, and what the downstream effect is inside your distribution network of the water quality is another use case we're investigating with the team on the roadmap. There's a few more I could go into. I don't want to go into share all the secrets we have planned, but there's definitely integration we plan with the hydraulic model to continue leveraging that, both inside Innomise and for our customers' investments.
What about extraordinary events, like a sporting event, an incoming wet weather event? AI can account for that. A hydraulic model could help supplement it with its what-if scenarios Do you just want to speak to the capability for AI to handle that extraordinary event, and then to maybe that supplementation with the model?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so an extraordinary event, an event that maybe the AI hasn't seen before and didn't show up in our historical data. And that's a great example where if we saw that type of event, we could then leverage the hydraulic model to generate some synthetic data on how the system will react given that event. And then we can dynamically retrain the system to be able to handle that event. And that is on the roadmap as well as an integration with the model.
Okay, great. Just got a couple questions left. It seems like all the discussion is around treatment plants. Does this software also work for distribution or collection systems? Do you want to just touch on that quick?
Yeah, so distribution, absolutely. I think in distribution, we're more focused on energy optimization and how we optimize there. Collection networks, we generally are in the plant level. I think there is opportunity in the sewer network level. If your system is reasonably well instrumented, there's definitely opportunity to optimize energy there. But is where I would say.
Okay.
The challenge that I guess, sorry, Patrick, to add, the challenge we've seen when it comes to networks, whether it's collection or distribution, is remote control is a big one. And it's less common that folks have remote control in those networks because they're so geographically diverse and spread out. And without remote control, it's pretty hard to change all the different pumps across an entire city without remote control. If you're constantly having to call, Joe's having to call his men out in the field all the time to change. So remote control is a key item there of what we need to be successful.
Okay, so there's been a lot of questions that have come in. I love the passion for AI and the dialogue that's going on. Our team will get back and answer every one of these questions. To kind of wrap this up, James, I wanted to end with a personal question. At what point did all this materialize for you? Like, when did you have the aha moment that this tech was real, this was the real deal? Was it a case study, a result, a moment working with the development team, working with Tawhid and R&D? When did this become real for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I would say a couple of years ago, they told me the story, and I said, okay, it sounds reasonable. But until I started seeing that first site really working, it was when it became very real for me. And so we had a customer in the UK, a water distribution network actually. And so we started optimizing their energy and optimizing their pumps and started seeing those actual savings. And that's when it really became real. We'd done some few studies before that, and it was, it felt solid, but until you see it really pull together, is when I really got excited and kind of my eyes really widened and said, okay, this is real. Let's go. Let's take this to market and let's expand it. So that's a great question, though. I like that.
That's wonderful, and maybe a nice note to conclude on. Thanks, everyone. Please be in touch. Our certainty on and belief in this technology is palpable, and we look forward to applying this with the problems you're actively solving. A bit of a call to action. Please drop us an email, reach out to James and I on LinkedIn, or visit the website and fill out that ROI calculator that James demonstrated on. It takes 5 minutes. Apparently it would take me 30, but yeah, 5 minutes to fill out and get that snapshot and idea of how much savings you can achieve for your particular site. Thanks everyone for your time. We really appreciate your attention. And thanks so much, James. It was great to have your expertise and experience on this.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to further conversations we have with our interested customers.
Likewise. Okay, take care, James. Have a good evening and good morning to everyone starting their day in Asia Pacific.
Take care. Thanks, folks.
Bye now.